Wow, that was a thrilling end to that race yesterday in overtime. You couldn't ask for anything better than that. Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Watkins Glen International, the super speedway of road course racing, where the high speeds on this 7-turn track can provide a lot of entertainment for a lot of these fans that come in every single year and pack the house to watch these drivers race on this fast super speedway road course track. And yesterday we got ourselves a treat with a lot of good battles all around, a couple of playoff drivers running to adversity, and a thrilling battle on the last lap for the win. Let's get into all that went down at the Glen. Number 1, Buescher on top on the last lap. Chris Buescher pulls it off on the final lap, passing Shane Van Gisbergen through the carousel and takes the lead and the win away to win the Go Bowling at the Glen, holding off SVG, Carson Hocevar, Ross Chastain, and Zane Smith for the victory. Yes, that is not a typo. The rest of that top 5 is very, very accurate. But a big win for Chris Buescher and the 17 team. A momentous win for this team. This team came into this season with a lot of expectations, thinking that they were going to be able to carry off the success that they had last year with all the wins and being able to make it all the way to the round of 8. They had high hopes for this season. All of RFK had high hopes considering how well both their cars did last year. Well, this year we got to see Chris Buescher fall short of victory lane a couple of times, including the race at Darlington and that thrilling photo finish at Kansas with Kyle Larson, where Larson beat him out by just that much. And unfortunately, some of those races where Buescher thought he had it, but ultimately didn't go his way, came back to hurt him when we kept getting new winners throughout the rest of the summer. And at the very end, Chris Buescher did not make the playoffs for this year. And all was left for him to do was to pretty much try to finish the year strong and try to get momentum for next year. And Buescher came into this race, I think, pretty confident that he was going to be able to run up front and have a chance for the win, because the last couple of years, Buescher has been very, very good at road course racing that we don't give him a lot of credit for. And yesterday, he did a great job running up at the front all race long, qualified inside the top 10, had good pace all race long. Didn't really show his strength until the very end of the race, where guys were on differing strategies. He was able to take the lead late, and he was pretty much hoping we would go green the rest of the way and we didn't have to bunch them all up for a restart. But unfortunately, with under 10 laps to go, that happened when Harrison Burton, one of our playoff contenders, blew a tire in the left rear, thus setting up a couple laps of dashing, which set us up for a dash to the finish of the race with a couple of late race restarts. And Buescher was battling side by side the entire time of those restarts while they kept wrecking behind him. And then in the overtime restart, he carried it into turn number 1, racing side by side with Hocevar. And all of a sudden, the 16 of SVG makes a move the inside 3 wide off of turn 1 and takes the lead from Buescher. And it looked like it was pretty much going to be Buescher falling short of victory. Even though he was keeping tabs with the 16 car that last lap, it looked like it wasn't going to go his way. But when they ran to the bus stop on the last lap, the 16 car in front of him made a big mistake when he clipped the wall area as they're entering the bus stop, slowing down his momentum. He got a little wide, and Chris Buescher ran him back down, put the bumper to him as they came out of the bus stop, and going into the carousel, moved him out of the way, and made the pass to the inside, the winning pass for victory. Of course, SVG tried that last lap to catch Chris Buescher back down and try to pass him for the lead and move him out of the way, but Buescher was not going to be denied, folks. He knew, given the fact that this team did not make the playoffs and knowing what they're capable of, he wanted this win badly to get this team some momentum and get some positivity back on their side. And they did just that yesterday. I mean, that was a textbook bump and run by Buescher on the 16 car to take the lead from him and victory. That was so impressive, and give a round of applause to that 17 team for fighting hard and not giving up on that last lap. When the moment hit in front of them for them to take advantage of the 16 car's mistake, they capitalized on that, and that's why they found themselves in victory lane yesterday. Now, of course, again, as I mentioned, Buescher, not a part of the playoffs, played the spoiler yesterday as one of the non-playoff drivers to prevent anybody that's racing for the championship right now from winning yesterday and locking themselves into the next round. But he'll certainly take that, and he knows that this team is better than where they've been performing the last couple of races. They know that they are a good race team, and they know that they can replicate the success from what they've had the last 2 seasons where they've been running good and winning races. Now they've got another win under their belt, and again, the best thing for them to do is to finish the year strong and carry that momentum into 2025, because I can guarantee you this, folks, Chris Buescher will be hungry to get back to the playoffs next year. And this is a good start. Even though we're not to 2025 yet, we still got to finish out the year. It's a good win nonetheless for the team. So a big congratulations to Chris Buescher and the 17 team on an impressive win yesterday. Number 2, SVG falls short. I mean, my gosh, this guy is so good at road course racing, and he made that mistake on the last lap that cost him the win? I can't believe it. And of course, Shane Van Gisbergen, we know he's been a really good road course racer since he entered the NASCAR scene. And of course, with winning the inaugural street course race at Chicago in the Cup Series last year, won a couple races at Xfinity this year. He almost had a chance to win Saturday's race, but things didn't go his way on some of the late race restarts because everybody kept wrecking. But yesterday, he put himself in position where it didn't look like early on in the race he was going to have a shot at the win because he was kind of fading a little bit. But then he was able to get himself back up there with the track position and the different strategy that he was on compared to the rest of the competition. And he found himself up there with a shot at the very end of the race. Again, on that overtime restart, he made a 3-wide pass inside of Buescher and Hocevar to take the lead from him, and it looked like he was going to run away with the thing. But the 17 team kept tabs with him all the way to that last lap until we got to the bus stop where the 16 car clipped the wall with the right side. Now, you're probably wondering, how is that possible? Well, one thing that NASCAR did entering this race, they took away the rumble strips entering the bus stop, and that's why you try to even out and prevent all these guys from hopping around all the time through those, that section with the curbs and everything. They wanted to take away the curbing to limit the hops that these guys take through there, and that played a factor, especially when he clipped the wall and brought the 17 car closer to the 16 car, and SVG pretty much had to hang on, but it wasn't enough as the 17 moved him out of the way through the carousel and took the lead from him. Shane, of course, was trying, after he got passed through the carousel, to get the lead back from Buescher as they entered turn 6 and 7. He tried to put the bumper to him. These guys were just fighting all the way to the very end. But unfortunately, it was not enough for him to move the 17 out of the way and get to victory lane. But still, a great performance for Shane Van Gisbergen. Of course, we know what he's got going on next year when the new year rolls around, because he'll be in the Cup Series full-time next year driving for Trackhouse Racing. And I'm sure, as disappointing as he was to come up short of the win yesterday, there's still a lot to be proud of for the effort they put together. And again, he's going to have a couple more opportunities. He'll be at the Roval in a few weeks, and he'll run a few other races this year, and he's still got an Xfinity Series championship to try to win this year with the playoffs beginning after this upcoming weekend's races. So he's got his work cut out for him, and he has to kind of, dig deep and kind of focus on what he has to do. But he's got another opportunity in a few weeks at the Roval to have a chance to get a win and make up for the one that got away yesterday. But despite coming up short, a great performance from SVG. Number 3, Chastain with a solid day. One of the best races in a while that I can remember Ross Chastain having in the Cup Series. He had a great race yesterday, finishing in 4th spot. It started with him winning the pole for this race on Saturday, and from the get-go, it seemed like, track position-wise and speed-wise, he had a really good race car. Now, he was one of the cars towards the end of Stage 1 that led to the pit because, again, he's on in the playoffs, and he is trying to fight for the win and get momentum to get himself back in contention in the hunt to win races and compete in the playoffs next year. So he was one of the guys that elected to throw away stage points in Stage 1, which a lot of teams did yesterday that were not playoff eligible. Of course, Joey Logano could do whatever he wanted because he was already locked in the next round. But Chastain was able to regain that try position when those guys had stayed out for stage points at the end of Stage 1. He got himself back up there. He won stage number 2. And it looked like the race was going to be his in that final stage, even with the different pit stop strategies. But unfortunately, he was just not quick enough to get by the 17 car or the 16 car and get by him on those restarts. Too many cautions and just not enough get-off speed from the get-go on these restarts. But despite all that, a good top 5 finish for the one team in Ross Chastain to just get some momentum back on their side because, again, they missed the playoffs. They took a gamble at Darlington to try to get in, but it didn't work in their favor, especially with the amount of laps we had left. Should have saved that for a little bit later in the race if they had the opportunity, and it was going to be worth the gamble. And then last week, they had a shot at top 5 or top 10 in Atlanta, but unfortunately, they got bumped in the last lap and smacked the wall. And instead of finishing in top 5, top 10, he finished in 13th spot. So this week to bounce back, win the pole, lead the most laps, and finish up in the top 5. Still a very impressive performance by the one team. Number 4, playoff adversity. Once again, a lot of playoff drivers had a lot of rough moments yesterday. We only had 2 drivers out of the 16 competing in the playoffs finished inside the top 10. Chase Briscoe finished 6th, and Austin Cindric finished in 10th. Everybody else finished outside the top 10. That's how crazy this race was yesterday for these playoff drivers. Some of them finished inside the top 15, like Kyle Larson, Daniel Suarez, Christopher Bell, Joey Logano. Of course, he already has the win. He's locked into the next round. And then guys in the top 20, Alex Bowman, Chase Elliott, and Martin Truex Jr. But a lot of playoff drivers face adversity from the start of the race. On the beginning, lap 1, bus stop area, Kyle Busch got a little bit loose, or got bumped from behind, and went around to the pack and collected Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, and Christopher Bell. 3 of our playoff drivers were caught up in that opening wreck, and Ryan Blaney was the only one of those 3 that was not allowed to continue the rest of the race because the car stalled out. There was not enough. There was too much damage for him to repair it, and they towed the thing back to the garage. They should have towed it to pit road, and he was not happy about that decision. And that resulted in him finishing dead last in the running order, only coming away with 1 point. He's 29 points above the cutoff line, but a rough result for the 12 team, and he is very frustrated with the outcome of him being towed back to the garage and sending back to his pits to see if they could try to fix it somehow. Hamlin had a lot of damage to his race car, including the left rear toe link, but they were able to fix that car and get him back out there, but unfortunately it was, pretty wounded to prevent him from having any chance of competing inside the top 10, top 15 at all. And he had another spin in the beginning of the final stage when he had contact with the 5 car and the 6 car going up through turns 2, and pretty much ruined the rest of his day and finished outside the top 20 in the 23rd or 24th spot in the top 25. A rough result for the 11 team, and the playoffs have just not gone their way. That engine penalty they had prior to the playoffs starting, the rough finish last week at Atlanta by not even electing to get up there and have a shot at a top 15, pretty much sacrificing any points whatsoever to save the car for later, came back to bite them. And them qualifying deep in the pack for yesterday's race didn't help them there as well. Christopher Bell, had a lot of, issues, again, being caught up in that wreck, but then during a sequence of green flag pit stops, he made contact with the 5 car and somebody else coming out of turn number 7 and spun around, but thankfully no caution came out and lost ballast track position until we had those late race cautions where he was able to catch back up and get a top 15 out of it, and still is the highest of the playoff drivers points-wise entering next week's race at Bristol. But then we get into the later stages of the race, the last 2 restart cautions of the race, where going up through the hills, everybody was side by side. Brad Keselowski's trying to make a pass on Joey Logano, but unfortunately Logano bumps into him. Keselowski goes over to the guardrail and collects poor William Byron with nowhere to go. The 24 went up and over the 6 car, nearly getting into the guardrail, but thankfully it did not happen, because if he had run right up into that catch fence area, it could have been really nasty for William Byron. It could have been really, really bad for Brad Keselowski, too. When you saw the damage on his car, it's unbelievable how he was able to drive away from them, both of them. They both finished the race, but unfortunately deep in the pack with rough results. And then on the final race caution of the race, where everybody was going up to the hill, there was some contact. Guys were shuffling around, and one of the guys caught up with was Tyler Reddick. He finished outside the top 20 based on that spin on the last yellow of the race and pretty much ruined his day. And, he didn't really show that much yesterday. Never saw him up in the top 5 once, not even competing for the win at all, which is fairly odd given the fact that Reddick has been very good on the road course racetracks the last couple of years. So a really rough day for a lot of our playoff drivers yesterday. And right now, as they show them, the 4 drivers below the cutoff line would be Denny Hamlin, Brad Keselowski, Martin Truex Jr., and Harrison Burton. Those 4 drivers right now are at risk of elimination after next week's race at Bristol. But for somebody like Hamlin, Truex, Keselowski, all successful, all be good at Bristol, they could run up front. They could win that race. But they're going to need to have solid runs. The 2 guys that were able to benefit from that despite rough days were, actually not Chase Briscoe's case. He finished inside the top 10. Ty Gibbs did not have a good day despite getting a few stage points, but he finds himself 6 points above the cutoff line. But that battle from 11th all the way down to 16th to see who gets out on points, pending that nobody that's 20 or more points above the cutoff line next week has an issue, it's going to be a dogfight for those guys. But a lot of playoff drivers had a lot of adversity yesterday. And number 5, the racing itself. Well, this weekend we brought a softer tire to Watkins Glen, hoping to see a little bit of fall off and see a lot of guys get at each other, get side by side, battling it out a couple laps into a run after they get a couple laps on these tires. We didn't really see a lot of that yesterday. Again, it was a lot of strategy splitting, guys pitting towards the end of the stages, giving up stage points for guys that are not in the playoffs. The guys that are in the playoffs that needed those points stayed out and were able to get some of those points, but a lot of them did not get the results that they were hoping for. Like Martin Truex Jr., he won stage 1, but he got caught up in one of those late race wrecks, and he finished in 20th spot. Just a rough outing for the 19 team, knowing that they really need to win, but could still realistically point their way in next week. And a lot of those guys that elected to throw, stage points away, and, they were able to find themselves up towards the front of the end and winning the race. I thought the tire compound, made it very interesting. Of course, the way they were racing hard on those old worn-out tires on the last 2 restarts for the lead and the win was very entertaining. It was so much fun to watch. But I think the soft tire option that we brought was interesting, but we'll see how it does in a few weeks when we test it on the Roval for that race if we bring that soft tire, which I'm pretty sure we will, to see a lot of fall off and see a lot of guys get at each other, with that being the ultimate wildcard race that we're going to have in the round of 12 when we eventually get there. Now, we are off to Thunder Valley, the last great Coliseum of racing, Bristol Motor Speedway, ladies and gentlemen. Saturday night under the lights, Saturday night's all right for fighting, and this upcoming race, it will determine which 12 drivers will advance to the next round of the playoffs versus which 4 will see their championship chances come to an end. We already know that Joey Logano is locked into the next round based off his win at Atlanta. And you look at the drivers above the cutoff line, like Christopher Bell, Austin Cindric, what a playoff round he has had. William Byron, despite his rough outing. Alex Bowman, Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, despite his early exit yesterday. Kyle Larson, a lot of those drivers. Tyler Reddick, those guys have got to feel pretty good about themselves entering next weekend at Bristol. You just don't need to have an incident that takes you out of the race and hurt you as far as the playoff standings. You've got to earn some stage points next week to feel good about your chances to lock yourselves in. A couple of drivers follow the race that are not including playoff contenders. You should feel really good about yourself locking up your spot. But for those guys around 11th through 16th, it's going to be a battle. Chase Briscoe and Ty Gibbs, again, are only 6 points above the cutoff line. Any one of those guys has a problem and falls out, Denny Hamlin or Martin Truex or Brad Keselowski can fall right up into that top above the cutoff line and lock themselves in. But these guys are going to have to be on their A game next week. And when I look at the drivers of who is in a must-win situation, basically I think the 21 car of Harrison Burton is really the only driver that is in a must-win situation. And given the fact that he struggled at Bristol the last few times we've been there, it's going to be a tough one for him. But if he could pull off another miracle like he did at Daytona a few weeks ago to get himself in the playoffs, anything is possible. But we'll see what happens and see who's going to be able to conquer Bristol, who's going to lock themselves into the next round of the playoffs, and we'll find out, unfortunately, which 4 drivers see their championship bid come to an end. But I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and I hope you're as excited as I am for the round of 16 elimination race under the lights in Bristol. So subscribe, like, and congrats once again to Chris Buescher and the 17 team on an impressive and thrilling win at Watkins Glen yesterday. Have a great week, everybody. Let's go racing!